Hey, good evening there. We're looking at a kind of a stormy evening in some parts of Texas here, and we've got just kind of a gloomy, kind of overcast. Things aren't very vertical this evening, but there's a lot of stratification ahead of this frontal system coming out of the Rockies, and we'll just jump to the charts and take a look at that. Anyway, here we are at the forecast center, and let's see what we got going on at the surface. There's the Texas analysis, and probably one of the first things you'll see besides the high pressure up north is the northerly winds up in Oklahoma and the Texas Panhandle. And that contrasts very sharply with the southeast winds in East Texas and Louisiana. So if we put that together, the leading edge of the outflow runs something like this, from about Little Rock down to about Tyler and down to San Antonio. Up north, there's another little boundary. Let's see, we'll probably put that something like this here. So you see that very strong contrast in winds between Big Spring and La Mesa and Sweetwater there. So another little reinforcing shot of cold air coming south. And then out to the southwest, we've got our main system coming in. You can see the winds down here in Chihuahua. They're out of the southwest, kind of gusty up to 27, and that's the cold push coming in from the Pacific. Then in between these air masses, we've got a little bit of a dry sector. Seeing here, the dew points are a little bit depressed in there, 40s and 50s. So where would we put that dry line? Well, the moisture kind of tapers off very slowly as we go to the west. So it looks like that dry line is probably all the way back near the Davis Mountains, maybe something like this here. So our triple point is found. Looks like it's pretty far to the west there, out near around Toya and whatever else is out there, Marfa, Alpine, out in that region. So not a very well-defined classic chase situation definitely here, but there is quite a bit of ingredient here for showers and a few weak thunderstorms. Now, as far as our moisture, we've got 40s, not 40s, we've got 70s dew points coming up northward. There's the isodrosotherm for 70. So that comes up from about south of Beaumont, up to about Huntsville, and then down to about Katy, or even further west. Yeah, it looks like around west of Victoria. So the moisture axis located right in here from about Houston up to about College Station. So those are the ingredients in our part of the country here. Let's take a look at things on the radar. There's the Fort Worth radar, showing kind of a disorganized pattern here. The outflow is located out southeast of there, roughly along this boundary here. So a lot of our more vertical thunderstorms are going to be out in this region here. And then what we have out west, out over Fort Worth and Mineral Wells out in that region, a little more elevated. And we can back that up by looking at the map out in this region, and you can see the dew points there are kind of low in the upper 50s to near 60, 61. And you can see the winds, they're kind of out of the northeast and east in that region. So not a whole lot of support there for thunderstorms. All right, let's see. Deeper stuff would be down in this region, but not much going on at this time. Probably the air mass is still somewhat capped in that area, and probably not a whole lot of cold air aloft. Okay, let's go to our regular charts and get kind of grounded in what's going on there. Well, our regular charts are digital atmosphere. I can probably switch over to that. Usually we take a look at this synoptic scale picture, and this shows us that we have a pretty deeply digging system that has entered northern Mexico right there. The main baroclinic low appears to be out over around the Big Bend to about Chihuahua, so down in this region here. So we're going to look for some baroclinicity, possibly up to southern New Mexico and possibly down to Old Mexico down in this region here. And then our older waves, those are continuing to move to the northeast over Arkansas. And then just taking a quick look elsewhere, looks pretty quiet out over the east coast, high pressure in that region. And then over Canada, I think we've been looking for, if I'm not mistaken, a little bit of an Alberta Clipper coming together, possibly in the next week or so, so we'll be watching up in this area. This looks like a little boundary out over Saskatchewan, kind of the leading edge of some of that colder air up to the north in that region. Looks pretty quiet on the Pacific coast. Looks like we just got a big Pacific high kind of nosing in over Oregon and Idaho out in this area here. So that's kind of how we put everything together there. And now we'll flip back to the usual online charts here. And I think a good one to start with, a good segue from that would be this thickness and isobar chart. And on that note, let me take a quick look at the chat, make sure our microphone is not off, or if we don't have a fire there in the chat room or anything going on. Let's see here. Move the mic here. Taking a quick look in here. Erica Baker, Coffeyville weather. Lower 40s, winds out of the north there, so definite cool down. David Moore, missed the thunderstorms in northwest Texas. Funwood Tech. Power just died in his area on his iPad now. So getting a little bit of weather there, sounds like. Or, I don't know, I can't tell from that chat whether it's the weather or not, but very well could be with it being March. Got Carl Berghoff here, and Shirley Keast, and David Moore. And David Moore reporting 50s for temperatures today. We've got Ryan Toomey's joining us from Florida there. Cooler weather there with mid-60s temperatures. Extreme flooding conditions occurring in the Midwest states. And Ryan also mentioning hopefully folks planned ahead along the riverfront regions. Tom J is here, and Ron Chalfant there in California. Crestline, California, 53, clear and very windy. Santa Ana winds 30 to 45 miles an hour there. We have Mike Wan here, and Adam Davis reporting Clarion, Pennsylvania, looking for mid-30s this week. Dylan Ross, 46, mostly clear. Andrew Murphy talking about the floods in Oklahoma. Had a lot of rain up in that region. David Holcomb and let's see here, reading through the chat. Jeff Krob mentioning showers passing Virginia, the eastern shore there. And very good. Ryan reporting all systems good, audio and video. Okay, let's go ahead and go to that thermal analysis. Hopefully you all have taken a look at that. And we do see the cold air up to the north. See that lurking up there? Those thickness lines really piled up there one after the other. So yeah, that's a lot of cold air sitting up there in Nunavut up there. Leading edge of that cold air looks like it's around the Winnipeg area through about Moose Jaw up to... Yeah, how about that? You don't see too many webcasts talking about Moose Jaw. Rest of the front up through Calgary and then up to Fort Nelson. So, yeah, that's what we got to watch over the next few days. Leading edge of that Canadian air lurking just up to the north. Then our Pacific system is off down in the bottom of the chart, down here. That looks like the cold front moving through northwest Mexico, where we have very little data. And then this chart helps us out a lot because we can see the warm sector out over Texas. Looks like 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. So I'd be inclined to put a warm front of some kind down in this region as a starting point. So just pretty much along I-10, right in that region. We can see the cold air mass out in this region here, Arizona, up to the Four Corners and down to the northern Gulf of California. So that cold air just passing Ron's place right there. And then we can see a little bit of an inverted trough extending up towards Memphis, and that's probably the old front that we've had pass through here a couple of days ago. That old stable wave located right in the area there. So that's the setup, 2 main systems, and this is indicating we've probably got a little bit of a split flow pattern going on. Southern stream down in this region, and then some sort of northern stream probably up in Canada like that. So progressing through the rest of the charts, the 250 millibar analysis for this morning, looking like this. There's the main Pacific system right there. Very intense 140 knot jet across the Great Lakes there. And then up to the north, we've got another jet system way up there. Very deep southwesterly flow across Texas. So that's likely adding to the bulk shears in this area. And you can also see why we don't have as much thunderstorm activity in East Texas. The winds are a little bit weaker in that area. And then out over the Four Corners, we see very strong troughing. That correlates very well with the cold air mass over Arizona and the northern Gulf of California. And that's helping to deepen that trough, that cold air, and bring up some of that Pacific flow across Texas. So no wonder we have a lot of upper level clouds. Then we'll take a quick peek at the moisture. And let's see here, the number in the lower left, that's going to be the dew point. So 12, that's going to be about 54 Fahrenheit. Again, this is this morning. And we see a little bit of a low-level jet. 30 knots at Lake Charles, 35 at Shreveport, and 45 at Fort Worth there. Even got 45 there at Brownsville. The winds are a little bit weaker around Del Rio, so that's a little suspect. That could be a little mesoscale interaction, maybe a shower there this morning, or maybe there's something else going on in that region. In any case, lots of strong winds and giving us kind of a classic setup for the morning spring. Yeah, what am I looking for? Yeah, morning in springtime. Seen that in many chase videos. You see the stratus streaming overhead, the high dew points coming up, air is very sultry and that kind of thing. And this is one of the first days of the season where we've had that happen. But take a look up north. Again, this is 850. This is 5,000 millibars. You can see very cold temperatures lurking up in this region. Minus 31 Celsius up in Cambridge Bay, 27 below at Baker Lake, and 25 at Iqaluit. So very, very cold air. And this shows we've also have quite a bit of depth to that cold air. So that tells us that there's a lot of volume to the polar air mass lurking up there. Okay, quick look at the mesoscale. It would be nice if we could do all of these, but we would probably be here till about 9:30 and people would be drifting away. So usually I try to kind of keep this to the most useful products here. So let's check this out. This starts out at about 1 p.m. this evening. This is temperature for the shading. The black lines are isobars, and the little flags, the tiny flags you see there, those are going to be the winds. This is all at the surface. So starting out, we can see that outflow boundary kind of dividing Texas in half, and we see the reinforcing shot coming south from about Ardmore to Lubbock and all the way out to Roswell. So let's go ahead and put that in motion here. You can see the cold air kind of seeping southeastward, kind of like leaving the refrigerator door open, and then this reinforcing surge coming southward. So that puts us about right here. This is where we're at right now. And usually what I'll do is I'll look along these boundaries and look for waves. And I see kind of a weak one around the Tyler, Palestine area, kind of in here. Looks like a little weak low pressure area. That's something I might watch for baroclinic development, and also the northeastern quad. That can be an area for enhanced severity if we have more instability and that kind of thing going on. So that can be a potential intensification area there for isolated cells. Elsewhere up and down the boundary, let's see, don't see any tight waves in here. In fact, it slackens off, and then we kind of lose the convergence right in there. And then we see the other wave right up here in Little Rock. So that's another little zone. So we can kind of tie that together kind of like this if we want to use frontal markings. So you can kind of see what's going on here, kind of like little mesoscale frontal systems along that boundary. You know, certainly kind of acts that way when we watch the data from hour to hour. And let's see how it progresses overnight. Looks like that boundary becomes kind of stationary through East Texas down to San Antonio. And then we see the reinforcing surge coming on through Dallas around the pre-dawn hours down to the Edwards Plateau. And then we warm up tomorrow. You can see that boundary in the almost the same place out there. So this is going to be a potent area for redevelopment. And then we get towards the end of the afternoon, and you can see these dots here, kind of like chicken pox all the way up to Shreveport. This is all convection going up from anywhere from Shreveport down to Huntsville and down to around Victoria. Then it looks like maybe the cold air mass is coming in. So let's see what happens there. Yeah, a bit of a cold push coming through. High pressure being indicated right there. But it looks like a little bit more cyclogenesis up in north in the Texas Panhandle there. So we're probably not completely done with the upper level trough just yet. Yeah, here it comes. You can see that right there through the Panhandle. This looks like the upper level subsidence way back here, working in and adding to the height rises in this area. And that will kick the front through Texas and through the plains. There it goes. See that little bit of cyclonic convergence there on the backside. Little what am I looking for? Cold low. Yeah, that's it right there. Yeah, a little cold low, because that's separated from the main system way out to the east. Got a little bit of warm air back in here, so this could be a good setup here. We're talking for Thursday for maybe some cold core convection across North Texas there. And there it goes. And then we get the actual polar high pressure coming in. There's the big ridge, and things shut down for Friday there. And then we see the action moving into the southeastern U.S. and the Gulf Coast region. Okay, we'll take a quick look at the SKU-Ts. For this evening, we're going to look at Fort Worth and just checking back on the surface charts. Obviously, Fort Worth is going to be back there behind the outflow boundary, a couple hundred miles back. So we're going to expect to see some cool and humid air near the surface. So let's take a look. Yeah, there it is right there. Temperatures in the low 60s. And we see a lot of noise in the sounding here. So possibly the launch is going through some cumulus clouds and a little bit of precip in there. and we see a couple of artifacts in here. Yeah, like this right here. That's bad data right there. See that layer right there? That's leaning to the left of the dried EBAT, which cannot happen. I'll back that up. It can happen briefly. There's kind of a very brief transitory kind of instability that could be what's happening there, but that could be an artifact there also from the radiosonde passing through clouds. Let's check out a couple of other soundings real quick. We'll take a look at Del Rio. And Del Rio, they're close to the tail end of that boundary. A little bit of convergence in that region. And looks like possibly that's probably the top part of that cold air mass. We can see the northeasterly flow right there. A little bit of warm air in the mid-levels. That's probably helping to keep things capped. And then as we get aloft, we can see some very strong winds. 100 knots up there from about 20,000 feet upwards. All right, let's check out the satellite. That's certainly going to be interesting. Yeah, very deep trough there. So now we have a pretty good idea what's out there. We know that this entire area from the Four Corners down to Arizona, that's going to be cold air. And you can see a little bit of a cold core low out there, and that's what's going to drift over to Texas over the next few days there. So that'll be in our area here on Thursday. Might have some pretty good drone footage here in a couple of days, because those cold core events, they do tend to be kind of photogenic. So you can kind of see the rotation back there. Very strong north to south movement there in Arizona, and then we've got that south to north movement in central New Mexico there, and that's outlining the location of that upper level low right there. And then out ahead of that, a lot of subtropical moisture coming north. And back in here, this is the clear slot. So we're likely seeing a lot of subsidence in this region. So where is the front going to be? This is the area of troughing, and then the area of ridging is way out here. So we're going to expect to find that front somewhere in here. And this is just kind of a very preliminary guess. And that matches pretty well with what we have on that GFS chart. Okay, we'll let you check out the water vapor imagery, and let's see what's going on in chat. Ren Font has never seen anyone who knows their geography like Tim does. That's because I've been looking at maps since I was like 8 or 9 years old. So, yeah, map knowledge goes very much hand in hand with meteorological knowledge because they're tied together. Not only the terrain, but also the land and water, all that, and just basic stuff like the eccentricities of weather stations. You know, you got to kind of keep track of that when you're looking at different stations, unusual things going on, and so on. Ryan says, very challenging guessing game. The area coming from the photo image shot. Dropped frames. Let me see, drop frames here. Oh yeah, we did drop some frames earlier. I must have been loading something. Okay, let's see here. Bit of buffering going on earlier from David mentioning that. And Carl Berghoff using channel 13 on GOES 16, 10.3 micron. Okay. So here's something we're going to do that's kind of interesting today. We're going to, I don't know if you looked at the title of this video, but what we're going to do here is we're going to take a traversal from west to east, and let me draw this for you. We're going to follow the 31 north line, and that's going to run like this. So that runs from about, we're going to start out off the Georgia coast and go across southern Alabama, across East Texas, and then we're going to cross underneath this plume and then get back into West Texas and then back into this subsident area south of Arizona. So what I did is I've loaded some high-resolution rapid refresh forecast soundings, valid for right now, and I've got them all set up here. So let me get that configured. There they are. And we'll take a look. So we're starting out here in Georgia. Let me see if I can shrink that just a little bit. Yeah, that looks pretty good there. So you can kind of read the latitude and longitude just barely up right in this area here. So 31 by -78 longitude. So we start out and we're over the Gulf Stream waters, and we've got a very strong lapse rate near the surface. So that's indicating some modification of the air mass going on. And we can see the winds are out of the northeast. So we're probably bringing cold air southward over the Gulf Stream current, and we're getting this steep lapse rate there. So that's a good location for stratocumulus to be forming. And then above that looks like some warm air. So let's go further to the west. So it looks like the mid-level inversion is strengthening a little bit. We're getting off the waters, and you can see the lapse rate start to diminish a bit. Now the winds are kind of light and variable in the low levels, and now we're going to get closer to Mississippi and Louisiana. So it looks like the sounding is starting to warm up a little bit as we get out towards Louisiana, becoming saturated. Now we're picking up this strong southerly flow coming off the Gulf. So now we're starting to get close to East Texas. We're getting in there. So we've gradually warmed up there. Now we're starting to cool off in the mid and upper levels. Still got those strong south winds coming in. And now kind of keep an eye on the lapse rate right in here, and you're going to see that really start to pick up here. So now we're getting into the I-35 area and now out towards West Texas, and you see now we're looking at a very steep lapse rate in there. So we're under that plume. We've got the southwest winds aloft. We are starting to lose a little bit of the tropical moisture in there, but let's keep going. There's the Big Bend area. The lapse rate is really picking up there. And yeah, this red here, that's Omega, indicating some very strong mid-level vertical lift in there. And then we get around the El Paso area. Very steep lapse rate, a little bit of moisture in the low levels, and now we're starting to really dry off there. So now we pick up the inverted V right there. Some very cold mid-level air. So we're about south of Arizona there. And now we're getting over the Gulf of California. So we're starting to lose the lapse rates there. And we're starting to pick up some moisture there. That's the Pacific Ocean waters. And you can see the northerly flow there off the Pacific coast. And then we start picking up an inversion there. That's the subtropical high in that region. So let me run that through one more time, and some of you may want to take a look at the photograph. Okay, so we're back in Georgia, and let's run that through one more time. You can see the photograph starting to elongate as we get out into Louisiana. And it starts stretching out a little bit there in Texas. Starts to weaken because we're getting underneath that outflow and all that. And then you can see the trace as a whole really starts lengthening as we get towards that jet stream action. In fact, part of it's off the top of the photograph. Lots of shear in there through the troposphere. And then as we get out towards the Gulf of California, everything sinks to this side of the photograph because of the northerly flow back in that region. So that's kind of an interesting look there, and I think as we get into storm season, moderate risk days and stuff like that, I'm going to try to make more use of this so we can really put the microscope to these air masses and understand them in more depth. I mean, this is just one of many tools you can use, and I'm obviously being creative here, but this is kind of some of the stuff you might want to do when you're sitting down and doing an analysis. And one other thing I wanted to kind of work in here was the NEXRAD data. Slightly off topic, but we can still take a look at that. One of these charts in here has NEXRAD data. Let me see if I can find that. I'm going to reduce this to Fort Worth here, so that way I don't interrupt the feed too much. Let me go ahead and plot that. So what we're doing is we're plotting the data there at Fort Worth, and you can see the rain showers and everything coming up. But some of you may wonder what that data looks like. Well, we can certainly take a look at it. This is the level 3 data from NEXRAD, and let me go ahead and bring this up here. This is a hex editor, because this is all binary stuff, binary data. You can kind of see some of it right there, and you can see SDUS 54 KFWD. So this is the header coming in from the Fort Worth radar. N0R, that's the reflectivity product for 0.5 degree. And then it picks up this binary data right there. So this is where we have to use the hex editor. So let's just take a very brief look at a little bit of this, and I'll see if I can find anything interesting in here. Obviously it's not very readable, and we're looking at it byte by byte. But let's let me scroll through here. See if I recognize anything. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, like this piece of data right here, there's 4 bytes. This is the latitude of the radar site. See right down here where it says long int, 32.573 north. And then the value next to it, these 4 bytes, those are the longitude. And minus 97.303. Obviously, this is not a very good way of parsing the data unless you're trying to find a problem. And that's where I use, we can use digital atmosphere, for example. Let me see if I can bring that up. And what I'll do is what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a watch here, and we'll take a look at some of the data real quick. So here it comes. We're running this in the debugger, and I'll just show you a little bit. Okay, I'm going to select the Tilt 1 product from Fort Worth. And what we've done is, this debugger, what it does is it stops the program, it pauses it right there, and we can look at all the data that's in memory. So radlat here, it's read the data, and you can see it says 32.573 right there in that little pop-up window. 97.303, and there's all this other data that's transmitted with the radar product. You can see VCP is 212. Sequence number, that's I think the volume sequence. There's the date and time in Unix format, and a bunch of other stuff. So that's kind of how we do that. So it's not very readable, definitely, not like the old SD RayRep product, but fortunately we have the power of computers to look at that stuff. So anyway, that's just a very brief look at the radar data, where it comes from. Not too many people have really looked into the very arcane art there of reading the radar products. Okay, let's go back to the actual radar. See if I can get that coming up here. That's how things look this evening. Looks pretty quiet. One little bit of hail there. One little speck of hail northeast of College Station. That's about out of the picture. And what we're waiting for is the next round, and it looks like that's it shaping up out to the west, out there in West Texas. Okay, so maybe I'll just go ahead and click on the Midland product, and hopefully that won't mess up our feed. Okay, we're going to look at Midland here real quick. And after that, we'll take a look at the short-term and long-term forecast. So there we go. We got a cell here. It looks a little bit outflowish, maybe a bit high-based. But the higher intensities, they are kind of on the leading edge of that cell. And here's our severe thunderstorm warning. Ping pong ball sized hail and 60-mile-an-hour gusts. So that's going to be heading towards that area north of I-20. And it looks like we got a couple of anvils off to the southeast or southwest there, maybe some cirrus there. We'll pick that up with the high-resolution rapid refresh and see what's going on. Okay, so the forecast tonight, let's check it out. Yeah, there's our developing line right out there near Midland. Trying to figure out what happened to my drawing tool. Let me see if I can get that going. Hang on a second. Hang on a second. Yeah, there it goes. I'm going to have to shut down my debugger. Okay. There we go. There's our MCS out there in West Texas, and this is that activity out south of the Big Bend area. This is probably along that cold front off there in Mexico. So looks like the high-resolution rapid refresh going for a little bit of development just northwest of Houston. However, a definite increase in activity out to the west there from Childress all the way down to Laredo. And you can see that activity picking up there, big MCS developing from San Antonio up to Corsicana after midnight. This stuff out around West Texas looks like that dies off. It's kind of cut off from the moisture there. And big MCS there all the way from South Texas up to East Texas. That moves out into Louisiana and Arkansas overnight. Weekends, looks like another round coming in from the west. And then we're probably going to be looking at some activity tomorrow afternoon in this area here. So we'll go ahead and go to the GFS and see how the rest of it shapes up. For tomorrow, there's tomorrow afternoon. Looks like most of the activity will be along that little inverted trough there, along the leading edge of that outflow, and it looks like our cold air is coming in out of Canada. So there's that right there. So a lot of activity developing from Louisiana down to the Texas Gulf Coast and moving eastward into Louisiana and the Mississippi River region overnight. And then for Thursday, we're going to see more redevelopment. Alabama, Mississippi out in that region right there. And of course, we'll watch for maybe a bit of cold core action in Texas. Back behind that system right here, the cold air advection is going to flow southward. So there's all that cold air coming into the Midwest and central U.S., and it looks like a reinforcing shot right there. So even more cold air coming southward for the weekend. So there's that push of cold air, a little bit of a wave in Iowa for Saturday. And probably a little bit of potential there for showers in Oklahoma because the Gulf is open a little bit right there. So a little bit of southerly flow coming up, maybe some 50s dew points coming up into North Texas. And that'll be along the leading edge of that system right there on Sunday. Okay, looks like another wave affecting this area right here, probably another Alberta clipper in the works. And a bit of ridging coming into the Dakotas. There's that old leading edge of that air mass right there in North Texas. And let's see, this is going to be Wednesday the 4th. A little bit of an Alberta clipper coming south. And that sweeps southward around the 5th and 6th. This one, GFS going for more shower and storm activity. And you can see the Gulf is open through a wider region. So probably even more moisture across Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Oklahoma there. So the 6th is looking to be a little bit wet down south. And looks like another active system coming in from the west. I guess this came from out in that region. This is on the 8th. This is going to be the following weekend. And yeah, that looks active also. And we're getting into April here, so with this very progressive pattern developing here, I think we are going to be looking at maybe some potential for some severe weather outbreaks. So we're going to have to kind of watch that SPC outlook for the next couple weeks at least. Okay, let me take one last look at the chat before we go. Carl Berghoff says, remember to like. Jeff Krob says, got to get Tim to use more of the Meso 30-second refresh sectors. Yeah, that's definitely a good idea. I need to get that all set up on my bookmarks. Ron Chalfant mentioning GOES-R, very helpful with cloud types, RGB data. Ron Chalfant mentioning the MetEd site, which is definitely very good. They've got online courses on there, and it appears they've got that configured there for GOES-R. Okay, good. Yeah, good discussion there in chat. I'll have to read through that a little bit later here. Anyway, let me get my closeout music set up. I had to reboot the computer, so I've got to bring up the music program. And here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Very good. All right, thank you all for watching. I appreciate you joining us, and hopefully we'll see you all tomorrow. Take care and have a good evening.